Maker Max here. I bet you don't have the manual for your Polaris Xplorer. And if you do, you probably haven't read it. So I'm going to go over a couple of key things, maintenance-wise, that people forget to do. Let's take a look. So if you open up the manual to the maintenance schedule, a lot of this stuff gets overlooked. So let's take a look at it and go over some of the key things. And you can feel free to pause the video if you want to read some of this stuff a little further. Let's take off the seat. Inside of here is our airbox. I put a little screening on my airbox because I had a rodent storing things inside there. We all know to check the air filter, but down inside here is our counterbalance oil. So down in here, here's our carburetor and our air cleaner. Down here is our counterbalance dipstick. I didn't even know this exists until I read the directions. I'm gonna try and use one of these things to get that. No idea if it's gonna work. Mine looks like there's no oil on it. So let's change it. It takes 10W30. So we're underneath the vehicle. The front of the vehicle is that way. All right, here's our starter. I took off the skid plate. This is gonna be our recoil drain, so in case any moisture gets in there. Our counterbalance drain right there. And then over here, tucked behind that wire, right down there, that's your crankcase drain. So you should open up all those. Oil is going to come out of this one, and you might get a little bit of water out of the other two. Let's give it a go. So that was my crankcase drain. Kind of some oily, gooey stuff. By the way, there's a 10mm socket on an American. I don't know why it's 10. And there's my crankcase, my counterbalance, which is coming out white. So that should have been changed who knows when. This is the recoil drain. Nothing. That's good. Okay, time to refill it. I just put a tube down into the hole, and I got some 10W30 regular old motor oil. And I'm going to use a syringe because it takes 75 cc's, so this is laid out. I can do 10 at a time, so it's going to take a little while. Okay, let's now put the dipstick back in and check the level. And we got a little bit on the bottom there. Man, it's such a tiny little spot, isn't it? According to your manual, your counterbalance oil should be changed about every 50 hours or once a year. Another overlooked area is the transmission fluid. Here's the dipstick right there. It's very hard to get to. Sometimes you have to use a pair of pliers to grab it, clamp on it, pull it out. It's got a magnet on the end too that collects goop, so make sure you clean off the magnet. As you can tell, mine looks like it has no transmission fluid, so we're going to drain and change that. Underneath here, I've removed my skid plate already. Here's the starter I was working with earlier. We come back just a little bit right here. See this big bolt next to our drive chain? This is the drain plug. Making a mess. All right, we'll let that drain for a bit, and then let's start refilling stuff. After you remove the transmission fluid drain plug, you're going to see a bunch of goopy oil and crud on the bottom. You got to make sure you, look at that, clean that off. That's a magnet, and those are just metal filings that collect in your transmission. So if I clean that off, that won't end up back in your transmission before you put the bolt back in. This goes on with a 3/4 ratchet or wrench. Okay, next we need to fill that down there, which is a real pain to get to. So I've taken a funnel and I've hooked it onto a hose. There we go, so that fits in there. You need to make sure that you get special Polaris gear case lubricant and transmission fluid. Don't just use regular oil. All right, this was like 15 bucks at the local store. I also heated this up with a heat gun because it doesn't pour very well. So now it's like water. Ended up taking about half the bottle. So 500 milliliters. Another area often overlooked is your brake fluid. Brake fluid should be changed out every couple of years. Let's see, we'll take a little sample with my syringe. All right, that looks pretty clear, so I'm gonna put that back in. If it's brown like coffee, or if it's got floaters in it, it should be changed. Brake fluid absorbs water over time and ruins its ability to do what it has to do. And bleeding the brakes often requires another person to help out. Make sure you use some brake cleaner and clean off any spilled fluid, because it will cause all the paint on your brake cylinder to peel off over time. We also need to maintain our all-wheel drive system that's got a lubricant in it. We're going to take a 3/16 Allen and loosen up the drain plug. Bottom of the drain plug has a magnet. Make sure you clean that off with a rag. Then you can just put a cup underneath it and you can roll it back and drain it out. Once it's drained, you're going to refill it with automatic transmission fluid type F. I like to use a syringe full of it and I just squirt it in there. It takes about 20 cc's. And then roll the drain plug hole around to the 4 o'clock position. And that's how you know it's full. There we go. Replace the drain plug and you're done. Another common overlooked area, there's a nut on here. There might be more than one on yours. That's to clean out your muffler. Alright, once you get that out, you're supposed to start and run the vehicle and rev it a bunch. I'm going to be honest, I'm never going to do this again. I cleaned all the rust off it, but the threads are actually like half stripped. So I would not recommend doing this. And I think I just stripped it with very little effort. So again, not recommend taking that bolt off. Didn't seem to do anything, even though the directions tell you to. And finally, on these older machines, you gotta make sure that you come through the grease gun and grease all the grease fittings. So if we come down here on the front, we have a grease fitting right here on the A-arm. There's a grease fitting down inside here on the U-joint. There's a grease fitting over here on your eccentric, down there. There's a grease fitting up here. You can see that back there on your steering. All right, so make sure you get all those, and there's one on the other side as well. All right, down here on the right side of the machine, you have a grease point down here on your A-arm. Then, I'm gonna go up inside here. We have our middle eccentric. And our grease point is right there. Make sure you get that. It often gets overlooked. And on the back of the machine, there's a bunch of grease fittings. Obviously, there's the big one right here. Make sure you get that one quite often. And then if you come way up here on your swing arm, there's one down in here that you need to get. And if we come up on this side, there's two. There's one right here for our swing arm. And then if you go a little bit farther, it's gonna be hard to get both of these in here. Go a little bit farther, there's another one down there. And that's for the where your drive shaft comes out, so make sure you get that guy. And there might be a couple others that I'm missing, but go over it, make sure you get all the grease fittings. You're supposed to do that like every 20 hours or so. All right, and you'll tell because you'll squeeze grease in, and if it's oozing out the side, then you're doing okay.